Hey guys, I'm Zip, and today I'm going to present to you my ultimate shiny hunting guide for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. You may have seen my previous video where I highlighted the isolated encounter method and covered where to hunt every Pokemon that was available with that method in the game. With isolated encounters, you can hunt about half of the Pokemon in the game, but I wanted to improve this to include other methods of shiny hunting. So, I've created a new spreadsheet that covers the best shiny hunting method for each Pokemon in the game, and now covers more methods, including Outbreaks, eggs, soft resetting, and more. Hopefully, with this guide, you should be able to find any and every Pokemon in the game. So first things first, before we actually get into the spreadsheet, I want to cover what shiny hunting methods we're using. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, most of the shiny hunting that I do is with the isolated encounter method. To give you a quick overview, what this is using an encounter power level 3 sandwich to boost the odds of one specific type of Pokemon. There are some locations in the game where only one Pokemon of a type will spawn. For example, in South Province Area 1, there are some spots where Hoppip is the only grass Pokemon. Previously, we could isolate about 215 Pokemon in the game, but that left about 180 to 200 Pokemon that couldn't easily be isolated but were still available as shinies in the game. This leads to our next method, which is available to most Pokemon in the game, which is Outbreaks. When you open the map, you'll see the icon of a Pokemon with a weird red and white symbol behind it. This means there's a Pokemon outbreak here. At this location, you'll spawn just that one specific Pokemon, split into waves for about 120 total Pokemon. After you've defeated 30 of the Pokemon, you'll have a slight boost to your shiny odds, and after you defeat 60, you'll have an even larger boost to your shiny odds. So outbreaks have been a great way to shiny hunt since day one. But there are a couple tips and tricks you can use to increase your odds at getting an outbreak that you want to get. You may have noticed that you get a lot of the same or similar outbreaks day to day. Personally, I get a ton of Magneton, Buizel, Floatzel, and other Pokemon like that. But there are two major ways you can improve your odds at getting an outbreak for a Pokemon you want. Both of them involve date skipping. So first of all, if you don't know what date skipping is, it's leaving your game open, going to the home screen on the Nintendo Switch, going into your settings and setting the date forward or backwards by a day. This is not unique specifically to Pokemon. People have been using it for Animal Crossing, for example, for a long time. By doing this when the game is still open, you'll get new Terra raid dens as well as new outbreaks. So to find the Pokemon we're looking for in an outbreak, we have two things to improve our odds. The first thing is standing in the area where the Pokemon spawns. As far as we understand, there is some preference to picking outbreaks of Pokemon that spawn in the area where your character is standing in the game. This means in the ocean, you might get more fish Pokemon outbreak, whereas on Glaciato Mountain, you'll probably get more ice Pokemon outbreak around your game. The other thing that can affect which outbreaks you get is using an encounter power sandwich. If you use a grass type encounter power sandwich, you are more likely to get grass type outbreaks. This works especially well for Pokemon that spawn in outbreaks but are very rare outbreaks. Anyways, once you get the outbreak that you're looking for, it's fairly straightforward to shiny hunt. You KO your 60 Pokemon, which is about 2 waves, and then after that, you'll just reset the Pokemon over and over again, whether through the picnic method, the town method, or just riding around. The next method in the shiny guide is evolution. Evolution is a fairly straightforward method for the guide. There are two types of Pokemon that this applies to. The first is Pokemon that have no actual spawns in the game. These are like third stage evolutions or starter Pokemon. For these Pokemon, evolution is your only option. The other group you may want to consider using evolution for is Pokemon that are more easily hunted at the lower stages. Maybe the first stage of a Pokemon line is isolatable, but the later stages are not. Next up, we have hatching eggs. Shiny hunting via eggs is a little bit different than it was in past generations. In Scarlet and Violet, you need to picnic with 2 Pokemon in your party to breed eggs for the 2 of them. With the shiny charm and the Masuda method, it should take on the order of a couple hours to hatch a shiny. And that's already not accounting for the amount of time it takes to get all your eggs together. All things considered, even with the best odds in the game, I think this is the slowest method in the entire game. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you particularly liked the experience. However, if you do want a shiny of every Pokemon in the game, you will need to get yourself a Ditto from another language. The last method that's on the spreadsheet is the soft reset method. This is a bit more complicated than the other ones and really only applies to one Pokemon. Because it's only useful for Spiritomb, I'm going to leave a link in the description to a video by Z-Logic explaining how to shiny hunt this. If you can avoid it, this method is a lot more cumbersome than any other method available in the game. So that's a quick overview of all the methods that we'll be using over the course of the spreadsheet. Now, isolation and outbreaks will be the majority of them, but the other methods will be covered here and there. So let's get to the actual spreadsheet. The first thing you may notice about the spreadsheet that was different than before is it's now been published instead of just being a Google Sheet. So you're no longer going to be able to comment on the sheet. But because of this, I've included a link to a Google form. If you have any sort of feedback, you can fill out the Google form and let me know. Now, let's talk about some changes to the actual sheet. One thing you'll notice is there are now a lot more sheets instead of just one sheet for all of the isolation. So the first sheet is every single Pokemon in the game, including how and where to hunt it. That's the same as it was before. The next sheet is the egg-only sheet, which only covers 12 Pokemon, but they're 12 very difficult to get Pokemon. The first 9 won't surprise you, it's all 9 of the starter Pokemon. So you'll hatch the 3 starters 3 times each if you want one of each of them. The next 3 Pokemon are interesting. So those 3 are Sunkern, Petalil, and Flabebe. Now Sunkern is one that I had a horrible experience with myself. Originally, I tested isolating Sunkern in flower patches all over the game. Unfortunately, the flower biome anywhere except for the Fairy Team Starbase is not large enough to isolate Pokemon. At the time, it was also thought that Sunkern was available in Outbreaks, but we now know this is not true. So I would be a little careful. If you can't find a Pokemon that's in an outbreak, it's possible it might not spawn. But after looking for Sunkern for a very long time, I decided the best method is just to go for the Masuda method egg hunt. So Petalil is another one, like Sunkern, that suffers from the same thing. Technically, Cerebi does still say it's available in Outbreaks, although I myself have never been able to find one. The last one up here is Flabebe. Flabebe can sort of be isolated, although it's a bit more complicated. By the Team Star Fairy Base, you can use sandwiches to isolate Flabebe, Floette, and Florges, that whole line. But in general, I've seen more of Floette and Florges than I have of Flabebe. So from what I understand, you could isolate it, but it's more rare and it only spawns in packs compared to Floette and Florges, which you can actually isolate in that area. Because of this, I've included it in the egg-only section because I think that's probably the easiest way to actually get it. After this, you will see one sheet for each type in the game, from normal to fairy. Each of these sheets lists every Pokemon in the game that can be shiny hunted with that type of sandwich. What this means is it can be found with the isolated encounter method, evolution, or outbreaks, which all use a normal type sandwich or a ground type sandwich, etc. These sheets do not list every Pokemon of that type on it. For example, Palmo is going to be found on the electric type page, but not the fighting type page. This is because with an electric type sandwich, it can be isolated, but not with a fighting type sandwich. If you're ever looking for a specific Pokemon, you should probably go to the all Pokemon sheet, Control F, find it that way. But now if you've finished a hunt, for example, Palmo, and you've used an electric type sandwich, you can go to the electric type sheet and see what you can hunt next with that. The next major change to the sheet is the inclusion of the videos column. If you guys are subscribers, you may have seen I've been doing a series called the Zip Decks, where I go through each Pokemon in this game and I shiny hunt them using the methods in this guide. While the information on the shiny guide itself is very useful, I figured it might be helpful to have a voiceover talking you through how to shiny hunt each specific one. This is also a way for me to sort of check my work on the shiny guide, just to make sure that all of these methods are viable. This is how, for example, I found out that Sunkern is the worst Pokemon to hunt in this game. Alright, part of it sucks because we've wasted so much time resetting for a Sunkern outbreak, right? But the other part really sucks because how are we going to get a shiny Sunkern at all now? Like, I have no idea where we could possibly do that now. You can't isolate it. Like, we're going to have to hatch an egg for it, I think. We're gonna spend hours today hatching an egg. The last thing about the updated sheet is the colors of the method cells. Now, the red cells mean this Pokemon can only be hunted or is best hunted through eggs. Like before, there are orange and purple cells for Scarlet and Violet respectively. This applies mostly to exclusives in each of those games, but there are a couple Pokemon that are only isolated in one game, where in the other game there's an exclusive that interrupts the spawns. The yellow cells mean that the best way to find this Pokemon involves other Pokemon. What I mean by this is, if you are evolving the Pokemon, you're not actually shiny hunting for this Pokemon, you're shiny hunting for the previous stage and just evolving it. Or, if it says isolate in yellow, this means you can isolate it, but there will be some other Pokemon there. Maybe it splits the area with one other Pokemon or two other Pokemon, but this is still probably the best method. Blue cells are all for Outbreaks, so most Pokemon in the game can be found in Outbreaks. Most Pokemon are available to shiny hunt through Outbreaks. But a Pokemon that has a blue cell that says Outbreak means that's the best method to do it, and you're going to want to use the date skipping methods that we talked about earlier. And lastly, isolated Pokemon are still in green, because I think, in my opinion, it's the easiest way to find a shiny Pokemon very quickly. I hope you guys enjoy the Ultimate Shiny Guide spreadsheet here and can use it to hunt any and every Pokemon you're looking for in Scarlet and Violet. If you like the work I did here and you want to support me in any other way, you can click the link tree in the notes section that has my Twitch, YouTube, and even a tip link if you feel so inclined. Good luck hunting, everybody.